Welcome back to the deep dive. This time, we're diving into something a lot of you have been asking about, AI in education, especially here in Taiwan.
Hmm.
We've got this stack of White House documents, a whole blueprint for AI rights, and we thought, why not do a deep dive and see what it means for all of us?
Yeah, this blueprint is fascinating.
One thing that really jumped out at me was this whole section on making sure algorithms aren't biased against certain students.
Right. It's called algorithmic discrimination.
And we'll even look at some examples of where AI has gone wrong in the past, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
unfair loan systems or even kind of creepy school surveillance stuff.
Yeah.
But the big question is, how can Taiwan use these ideas to make sure AI in education is really benefiting everyone?
That's the key, right? And that's where this blueprint, even though it's from the US, is so relevant. It lays out some global concerns about fairness and making sure AI doesn't, run wild.
Right.
And it's not law yet, but it's a strong signal of where things are headed globally.
So it's like a heads up for Taiwan, especially with all the focus on tech here.
Exactly. And this blueprint doesn't just talk theory. It gets into real-world examples of AI failures, which I think are really important for everyone to think about.
totally.
Like, one that really stands out is this sepsis prediction model they were using in hospitals. It was so inaccurate, it ended up causing more problems than it solved.
Oh, wow. So you could have like an AI system in schools that's supposed to help students who are falling behind, but it gets things wrong and actually hurts them.
Yeah, that's the fear.
That's a bit scary to think about.
It is, and that's exactly why this principle of safe and effective systems is so important. The blueprint stresses that any AI used in education needs rigorous testing. We can't just assume it'll work perfectly,
Yeah.
especially in Taiwan.
Especially in Taiwan, yeah.
It's a pressure cooker environment when it comes to education.
Totally.
We can't afford to get this wrong.
No, absolutely not. And speaking of high stakes, the blueprint also talks about algorithmic discrimination.
Yeah.
Right? This whole idea that AI can accidentally disadvantage certain groups, even if no one meant for it to happen.
Yeah, it can perpetuate biases, even unintentionally.
Right.
And that's a huge red flag in the Taiwanese context.
Yeah, especially.
Where we already have some social inequalities.
Yeah, for sure.
The blueprint gives this example of a loan system in the U.S. that was charging higher interest rates to graduates of historically Black colleges and universities, simply because of patterns in the data it was trained on.
Oh, wow. That's alarming. It makes you think, like, could something similar happen with, say, university admissions in Taiwan? Or even how students are placed in different academic tracks?
It's definitely something to consider, right?
Yeah.
We need to make sure these AI systems aren't making those inequalities worse, especially when it comes to really crucial decisions that affect students' futures.
For sure. Another thing that really stood out to me in the blueprint was this idea of data privacy. Like, students shouldn't be treated like lab rats, right?
Absolutely. It's their data.
Yep.
They should have a say. And it's not just about protecting sensitive information from being leaked. It's about students having control over how their data is used in the first place.
Right.
And, those long terms of service agreements we all click through without reading.
Oh, yeah.
The blueprint actually critiques those,
Oh, interesting.
saying they're not enough to truly safeguard student privacy.
I can't even imagine what kind of data AI could collect in a school setting.
Oh, it's a lot.
Like everything from, academic performance to social interactions, even like,
It's all trackable.
Yeah.
It really is.
it's a bit unnerving.
It is. And the blueprint uses some pretty chilling examples of how data has been misused in other areas, like companies tracking employee discussions about union activity.
Oh, wow.
So if that kind of thing happened in schools, imagine.
Yeah,
It could really stifle free speech and critical thinking.
it's pretty scary to think about.
Yeah.
So how do we balance like the potential of AI to personalize learning with the need to protect that student data from being exploited? It feels like kind of a tough question.
It is a tough question. And it's one that Taiwan is going to have to grapple with as AI becomes more integrated into education. We've got to figure out what level of data collection is truly necessary for learning and what crosses the line
Right, where's that line?
into invasion of privacy. Yeah.
That makes sense. And speaking of transparency, another big theme in the blueprint is notice and explanation.
Oh, absolutely.
Students and parents deserve to know when AI is being used and how it's affecting them.
It's like the blueprint uses this analogy. You wouldn't want a doctor prescribing medicine without telling you what it is or why you need it.
Right.
Same principle applies to AI in education.
Makes total sense. So it's not just about making sure the AI works, it's about making sure people understand how it's working, especially here in Taiwan where, parents are so involved in their children's education.
For sure. Transparency is key, especially in a culture that values understanding and explanation.
Totally.
And the blueprint gives this example of like predictive policing systems that flag individuals as potential criminals without any explanation.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Imagine that in a school setting.
Right.
An AI flags a student as, likely to drop out. But no one knows why or how that decision was made.
Yeah.
That just breeds distrust, and it could potentially lead to real harm.
Absolutely. It seems like transparency is key here, especially when we're talking about these big life decisions that could be based on AI. And that leads us to human alternatives.
Yeah.
Even with all this AI, we got to make sure humans are still in the loop, right?
That's a crucial point. The blueprint is really clear about that.
Yeah.
In those high-stakes situations like grading, discipline, college admissions, humans should have the final say. AI can be a tool to inform those decisions, but it shouldn't replace human judgment altogether.
Makes total sense. It's like having a safety net,
Yeah.
The blueprint uses the example of ballot curing procedures for mail-in votes, where officials review signature discrepancies. So it's like having that human check to make sure things are being assessed fairly.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it really highlights that need for human oversight, especially in areas where AI might not fully grasp the nuances of the situation. AI might not be able to understand the cultural context of a student's behavior or, the personal challenges they might be facing.
Right. It seems like striking that balance between AI and human involvement is going to be so crucial for Taiwan
Oh, for sure.
as we kind of navigate this new landscape of education.
It is. And that's what we'll be diving into next, right?
Exactly.
But before we move on, a
Yeah.
question for you, dear listener. In what areas of education do you think human judgment should always trump AI? Think about it.
Take a second.
Yeah, we'll be back in a flash to explore how Taiwan can really make the most of AI in education while avoiding those pitfalls.
Avoiding the dark side.
Exactly. Okay, so we've unpacked all these principles from the AI Bill of Rights. And it's clear they raise some pretty serious questions about fairness, transparency, and making sure AI in education is really helping students, not hurting them.
Yeah, and it's a bit mind-blowing to think how easily AI could actually make existing inequalities in Taiwan worse,
Yeah.
if we're not really careful.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting, right? How do we take these principles, which are obviously coming from a U.S. perspective, and make them work for Taiwan's unique educational landscape?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're already a tech leader, but AI adds this whole other layer of complexity.
Totally.
Where do we even begin?
Well, I think a good place to start is with the Ministry of Education. They're going to have a huge role to play in setting guidelines for how AI is used in schools.
Right. It can't just be like a free-for-all. Every school doing their own thing.
Right, exactly.
We need some kind of national strategy, don't we?
I think so. Like a clear roadmap that outlines Taiwan's vision for AI in education.
Okay, so what would that look like?
Well, first, we need to define our goals. What do we want to achieve with AI in education? What are the potential benefits? But also, what are the risks? And most importantly, how do we make sure those benefits are reaching all students, not just a select few?
And that's a big challenge, right? Because Taiwan's education system is famous for being pretty intense, especially with the Liankao exams. How do we make sure AI doesn't just add to that pressure cooker?
That's a really valid concern. Imagine an AI system, for example, that's designed to prep students for the Liankao. Could it unintentionally disadvantage students from, say, rural areas or lower socioeconomic backgrounds who might not have the same level of, digital literacy?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So it's not even just about access to the technology itself. It's about making sure everyone has the skills to use it effectively.
Yeah.
And not just the technical skills, but also the critical thinking skills, right?
Exactly. We need to make sure AI is leveling the playing field, not creating new divides.
And it's not just about access to technology either, is it? There's also the question of, cultural values.
Oh, absolutely.
Taiwan places a high value on respect for authority, right? So how does that play into the principles of notice and explanation? Will students feel comfortable questioning an AI-driven decision, especially if it's perceived as coming from, a teacher or the Ministry of Education itself?
That's such a fascinating point. It's almost like we need to develop a whole new kind of digital literacy, right?
Yeah.
Not just how to use AI, but how to critically engage with it, even challenge it when necessary.
Love that.
Question it.
Yeah.
Push back.
To be able to think for themselves.
Exactly.
And that brings us back to the teachers. They're the ones on the front lines of all this.
Right.
So how do we equip them to navigate this new world of AI in education?
Teacher training is going to be absolutely essential. We can't just throw them into the deep end with all this new technology and expect them to figure it out on their own.
Oh.
It's not just about teaching them how to use the tools. It's about helping them understand the ethical implications of AI, recognizing potential biases, knowing when to step in and override an AI's decision,
Right.
It's like they need this whole new set of skills and awareness to be effective in an AI-powered classroom.
It's almost like we need a new kind of teacher education program.
Right.
One that's specifically focused on AI in education, combining pedagogy, technology, and ethics.
Absolutely.
Like a holistic approach.
It's not that idea.
Yeah, a holistic approach to AI in education.
Yeah.
And what about the curriculum itself? Will AI change like what students learn, not just how they learn it?
I think it has to.
Yeah.
In an AI-powered world, skills like critical thinking, problem-solving, creativity, collaboration, these are going to be more important than ever.
So less rote memorization, more real-world application.
Exactly. We need to prepare students for jobs that don't even exist yet. Jobs that will require them to work alongside AI.
Wow, that's a tall order. But it sounds like AI could actually help us achieve that, right?
I see.
Like personalized learning, adaptive assessments. These are all tools that could make education more engaging and more effective.
Absolutely. AI has the potential to really unlock learning in ways we haven't even imagined yet. But again, we have to be mindful of those potential downsides too.
Right. Like that digital divide we talked about earlier. How do we make sure all students have equal access to these amazing AI-powered tools and resources?
That's a key challenge, and it's going to require significant investment in infrastructure, not just in schools, but also in communities that may lack access to reliable internet or the latest devices, right?
So it's more than just buying computers, isn't it? It's about digital literacy. It's about making sure everyone has the skills to thrive in an AI-driven world.
Exactly. And it's also about making sure that these AI systems themselves are designed with accessibility in mind, catering to different learning styles and abilities.
Okay, so we've talked about the role of the Ministry of Education, teacher training, curriculum development, bridging that digital divide. What else needs to be on Taiwan's AI and education agenda?
One thing that I think often gets overlooked is research and development. We need to make sure Taiwan is not just consuming AI technology, but actually contributing to its advancement.
So supporting Taiwanese companies and researchers who are developing these cutting-edge AI tools for education.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we need to foster a vibrant AI ecosystem here in Taiwan, one that's focused on creating solutions that address the specific needs of our education system.
And that brings us back to the AI Bill of Rights. It's not just a set of rules, is it?
No, definitely not.
It's a starting point for this bigger conversation about what we want AI in education to look like in Taiwan.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's a framework for thinking about these ethical implications.
Yeah.
And making sure AI is truly serving the best interests of, our students and society as a whole.
So, listener, what are your thoughts on all of this? What excites you about the potential of AI in education? And what concerns you? We'll be right back in part 3 to look at some real-world examples of how AI is already being used in classrooms, both here in Taiwan and around the globe. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. So we've been talking about all these big ideas about AI and education, but I want to see it. How's that actually playing out in real classrooms?
Yeah, let's get down to the practical stuff.
Yeah, the rubber hits the road.
One area where there's just a ton of innovation happening is in personalized learning. This idea of tailoring education to each student's individual needs,
Yeah, that's always been the dream, right?
It has.
But it seems like AI is actually making it possible.
I think it really is. We're seeing AI-powered tutoring systems that can give students personalized feedback and support, even outside of class time.
So it's like having your own personal tutor, 24/7.
Pretty much, yeah. Imagine a student who's struggling with math. Instead of waiting for the next lesson or relying on, busy parents, they can get instant help from an AI tutor that adapts to their pace and learning style.
Oh, I see. That would be huge for students who need that extra support.
What?
It's like leveling the playing field in a way that traditional teaching sometimes can't, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool.
And it's not just about tutoring. We're also seeing AI being used to personalize the curriculum itself.
Oh, interesting. How does that work?
So imagine an AI system that analyzes a student's strengths and weaknesses and then suggests specific learning activities or resources that are tailored to their needs.
Oh, okay. So instead of everyone reading the same textbook,
Yeah.
students would get custom reading lists based on their, interests and learning goals.
Exactly. It's like having a personalized learning journey.
Cool.
And the system can even adjust the difficulty of the material based on how the student's progressing.
That's pretty amazing. It really sounds like AI could make learning more engaging
It could, yeah.
and effective for everyone.
It has that potential for sure.
Yeah.
Another area where AI is having a huge impact is in assessment.
You mean like grading tests?
That's part of it, yeah.
I bet AI can do that in a snap.
It can, but AI's role in assessment goes way beyond just speeding things up. It can actually help create more sophisticated and personalized assessments.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow.
So instead of just marking answers right or wrong, imagine an AI system that actually analyzes a student's responses to understand their thinking process.
Oh, so it's not just about the final score. It's about understanding how they got there.
Exactly. It's like having this window into the student's mind.
Yeah.
And that kind of AI-powered feedback can really help teachers understand where students are struggling and how to best support them.
That makes sense. That sounds useful for teachers and students.
It is, yeah. And these assessments can be adaptive, too, meaning they adjust the difficulty level based on how the student is doing.
So it's more like a conversation than a traditional test.
It can be, yeah.
That sounds way less intimidating, especially in a high-pressure environment like Taiwan.
For sure. And speaking of Taiwan, there are already some really cool examples of how AI is being used in education here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one interesting example is the use of AI-powered chatbots to provide support to students.
It's like having, like a virtual teaching assistant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These chatbots can answer questions about the curriculum, offer feedback on assignments, even provide some emotional support.
That's wild, especially for students who might be, shy or hesitant to approach a teacher directly.
That's a great point. That's one of the big advantages. And these chatbots are just getting more and more sophisticated all the time. They can understand natural language and respond in a way that's, helpful and engaging.
It seems like it'd be a really valuable resource for students.
It really could be, yeah. Another interesting example is using AI to analyze student data and spot patterns that, humans might miss.
Like early warning signs that a student might be falling behind or at risk of dropping out.
Exactly. That kind of predictive analytics can help schools intervene early and provide support before it's too late.
Oh, wow. So AI is like giving educators a superpower to help students succeed.
In a way, yeah. And this kind of data-driven approach can really help make education more equitable and more effective for everyone.
That's great. We've seen some inspiring examples of how AI is already being used. In Taiwan, globally, it's really cool. But I think it's important to remember that AI is a powerful tool, and it can be misused.
You're absolutely right.
We can't forget about that.
We have to be mindful of the potential downsides,
Yeah.
even as we embrace all the potential benefits.
We've talked about algorithmic bias, data privacy,
Yeah.
but are there any other ethical concerns that we should be thinking about as we kind of move forward with AI in education?
One that I think often gets overlooked is the potential impact of AI on human relationships.
Oh, interesting.
If students are mainly interacting with AI systems, they might have fewer opportunities to build relationships with teachers and their peers.
I see, yeah. So it's not just about the academic side of things. School is also about social and emotional development, right?
Exactly. Those human connections are so crucial for learning and growth. We don't want to create a generation of students who are socially isolated because they're spending all their time with machines.
That's a really good point. So it's about balance, right? Finding that right balance between AI and those human interactions.
It is, yeah. AI should be a tool to enhance those relationships, not replace them.
Okay, so after this whole deep dive into AI and education, where do you land? What are your final thoughts?
I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic, I'd say. I think AI has the potential to revolutionize education in some incredible ways, but we have to be thoughtful and intentional about how we use it.
I completely agree. It's up to all of us to shape this future responsibly. We need to have these conversations, the ones we've been having. Consider the ethical implications and really ensure that AI in education is serving the best interest of all students.
Well said. And who knows what the future holds, right? The possibilities are really limitless as long as we proceed with wisdom and care.
That's a great note to end on. And with that, we'll wrap up this deep dive into AI and education. We hope this episode has given you some food for thought and maybe even inspired you to learn more. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.